Hello and welcome to another update for Heist League. So I spent most of yesterday and parts of today even testing around quite a few setups. Since I've decided this league, I don't just want to boss farm for the first week just to make money and just doing the same thing over and over. This league I try around a few different setups on my miner to make him more tanky, and it ended up being successful. So first of all, if you pretty much play this miner like I usually do, just to farm bosses early and you don't mind dying and not leveling up, so you just want to farm bosses for money, then I would not go for this setup since it's a bit more expensive than my usual miner setup. But if you prefer an all-round character that can still farm bosses, because as you can see I've still doing Shaper and haven't died, I just leveled up like right before the Shapers. So if you still want to do all content, but you will have a lot less damage than I usually do, but you will be a lot more tanky. I did manage to pretty much level today from level 93.5 to 95 without dying a single time, which is definitely great. So first of all, the stuff I've tested around with. So first I hopped into standard to test a low life variant, since I didn't want to spend all my money going low life and then regretting the decision. So I hopped on standard, tested low life for a bit. Now mind you, my tests of low life were pretty brief since I pretty much just threw a character together pretty quickly and went to test it. And first of all, the damage wasn't really there. I must also mention I did test Glacial Cascade. And I didn't really give it too much thought to properly scale it and min-max it, at least for league start purposes. So I didn't have any jewels and stuff like that, but I did try and go for some type of realistic gear. And the damage wasn't as great as my current character. On top of that, even with low life, I didn't really have a good way to sustain ES very fast. So at the end of the day, I decided to scrap the low life ID since I would at the time be spending probably around 20 exals, which before that I didn't really want to spend too much money in the build still, so I didn't really want to spend the money, and on top of that I would still have the same issues, not having sustain. The damage will also drop considerably, so I didn't go for it. After that I hopped back on the league and I tried going for some type of block character. So since there is some staff block nodes here, so this would be still using a staff with Tremorald, so you can get these nodes to get some block. And then these two nodes are pretty good as well for damage. And then you have some block nodes over here. You have these. So they have a couple of block nodes nearby. Now, after respecking, and I actually went for it, I ended up with only having around 30, like 35 or something, spell block and attack block around there, which in that case I was gonna drop phase acro as well. So I would pretty much just be trading the dodge in for block, which for the point investment, it was already more points than just grabbing acro and phase acro, and at the end of the day, 30% dodge or 30% block would pretty much be the same thing. But the next option I had, since I did end up with 35% block, I could go for glancing blows, which would pretty much double my block chance, so I would be almost cap block, probably with a bit more investment could get cap block. But then there was a lot different issues with that. So first of all was skill points, so it'd have to drop quite a few things, most notably probably more damage, so the damage would drop even more than it already did. On top of that, with glancing blows, it's very good defensively, but I think what really makes it shine is if you get life on block, or of course if you're an ES based character you get ES on block, which other than having a shield, there isn't really any reliable life on block ways. You do have a notable, which I can't remember the name of, but that only gives you 20 life on block, which is not that much. And the main nodes you want is either from the Surrender, which gives you 250 life on block, or just a rare shield, which was probably what I would have went with, which gives you 5% of life on block. So if you do want to play with a shield, it's definitely a good way maybe to go for block. Now of course you would not take these nodes because they're for staff, but there are other nodes I think over here somewhere, and they give you spell block for shields. So that's another option, but I just had to scrap that. And then finally the option I did go with, pretty much just stacking more life and going for life regen. So with the mapping setup, I'll go over my gear in a little bit, but we have about 7k life, and with the Tremorald for bossing we have 6.7k life, which is definitely very acceptable. On top of that, the life regen, so with just the stone golem, and we did manage to run vitality aura as well. We have 564 life regen. Now if we start detonating our mines, as you can see it goes to about 1.6k life regen, and as you see right there, it did jump to 2.3k. Now what that is from this node over here, surging vitality. So every 5 seconds regenerate 10% of life over 1 second. So technically this is pretty much a 2% life regen per second on top of the 0.5% that this node already gives. And then recently I also picked up this node, which is another 1% life regen, but only recently got this as I leveled. And then of course I pick up also these nodes to fit in vitality. Now mind you, as great as this sounds, most of the time realistically the stone golem dies, so once we remove that, our life regen is still very respectable, so we don't lose that much from removing the stone golem, very much 100 life regen. Now also this is with the consecrated round from Purifying Flames, so which is fireball, which is what we usually use for mapping. We will have about 1.1k life regen, so it's still good enough since, like I said, I have not died yet since switching over to the setup, but it's a bit less than I thought it would be. So as for my setup, so first of all, the single target, we're still using Tremorald with Purifying Flame. We still have the Chaos Heart. The helm, I pretty much recrafted my helm and got very lucky since I used Screaming Essence of Loading. Now spoiler, you don't need the reduced mana reserve on your helm. I just figured I may as well go for it since it'll help me a bit. But we have more than enough mana at this point, so you don't need that. But as you can see, this helm, I got really lucky. I got 2 resists and tier 1 life. And tier 2 resist is the highest you can hit on this helm since item level 76. So definitely very lucky there. Switched my amulet around as well. The main reason I switched was because I needed dex, and my old amulet had onyx, and I was 8 dex short, so getting the 24 strength and dex would just give me enough 120 dex to use a zero step still. And the fizz damage as extra fire damage is roughly the same damage as +1 to all fire skill gems, so it's not a big deal. The +1 fire would technically be better since it would also benefit the fireball for clear over here. But it's not that big of a deal since this one has more life as well than my old one, and I ended up selling my old one for 5 exalts, so definitely a win there. For the rings, went with 2 vermilion rings with pretty much just life and resist, and also mana. This one even got chaos res. This one I self-crafted. This one I think I bought for 1 exalt or 1.5 exalt. Again, mind you, I did spend more than you should probably on this gear, so you just want a decent ring with life and resist. And same for the other one, of course. The gloves, so I did change my gloves. The only thing I added is another resist since I needed a resist. Again, overpaid for these. I think I paid 2 exalts. My old gloves, like I said, they're pretty much the same thing, just a little bit less res. So if you can get a resist anywhere else, like changing the zero step for example, you can definitely fix this character a lot cheaper since you will need a lot less resist. Then the belt, again just life and resist. I did also get strength. Now I have way more strength than you need. You only need 191 for the chaos, but strength also gives you life, so you can see here 2 strength is +1 life, so it never hurts to get more strength if you can. And then I did step, still using it with the enchant of crit chance. Pen enchant is also good, so either one is good for you. And kills, of course, and the jewels. So we have this one with life, damage pen, and crit multi. So on a bitch jewel, the damage pen, if you haven't killed recently, is very strong as a miner, since when your mines kill stuff, it doesn't count as you. So this 2% pen is always up, pretty much. I'll also talk about my choice and why I went for a bow. So originally I think I still have my old staff, so I was using this, and this is still fine enough to clear maps, but with the damage we did lose since all the changes we made, I thought with this one it was starting to get a bit slower to kill rares and stuff like that in legions for very high maps. So I decided to upgrade the staff, but then I realized I can just make a bow instead. Now the benefits of a bow is, first of all, projectiles from socketed gems fork, which before we had to use fork gem, so now we get a free fork, which is pretty much a +1 skill gem. So I went for charged mines for the frenzy charges for speed during mapping, but if you want more damage you can easily put trap and mine damage here, which will give you a lot more damage. So if you like damage, go for that. Next up with the bow, you can get +1 gems very easily. So the way I crafted this bow actually, now I probably spent around 10 exalts on my bow, which is a lot more than this would be worth. But first you need a I-85 bow that's Crusader. Now you also want a very low base because you don't have the dexterity, so we only have 120 dex, so Grove bow is the highest base we could get. So pretty much when I searched for an I-85 Crusader bow that's under 120 dex, there was none. So that meant I had to use a Crusader Exalt. So I bought a Grove bow. You can also go for a recurve bow, but I could not even get one, even without the influence. But that would be the best base, and it also gives 25 multi on the implicit. After that, you make it Crusader, then you alteration spam until you get the Socket the Gems fork. Now this is about 1000 alterations on average, which is like 2 exalts. The Crusader Exalt is also 2 exalts. And then most likely you will need to 6-link it, since you probably won't find a base like this that's already 6-linked. But after that, the crafting process is very easy, since once you hit the fork, you just want to augment and regal. It does not matter what you hit at that point. But you want to end up with 2 suffixes and 1 prefix, which if you do with the regal hit another prefix, you can easily just beastcraft prefix to remove a random prefix, add a random suffix, since it does not really matter what you hit as the prefix. Like you can see here, I hit tier 9 cold damage, which does nothing for the build. But then at that point, when you have 2 suffixes and 1 prefix, you gotta craft cannot roll attack mods, which is a suffix, and then Exalt Slam the bow. The only option you can get is +1 to level of Sacred Gems. So it does cost 2 exalts, and so 1 exalt for the craft and 1 exalt for the slam. But then after that you have +1, you have fork, and then an open prefix and suffix. So most likely you'll craft the prefix. The best one I had was % mind damage. So that's pretty much the bow. As for the quiver, since you don't need resist at all, since when you weapon swap, of course, you don't have the quiver, so don't balance your resist around the quiver. So we just went for crit, damage, and crit, life, and prod speed. Since pretty much prod speed is actually really good for fireball, since it makes the fireballs faster, which also makes them travel further. As you can see, without the quiver, they don't go that far, and they're very slow. But with the quiver, they go a lot faster. So that's what you want for the quiver. I'll go over my gems, but not much change here. So Minefield, High Impact, Charge Mines, GMP, Fireball, and Inspiration. Realistically, you can switch the Inspiration for Travel Mind damage, since that will be a lot more damage, but unfortunately we have a red Socket, so we work with what we can. And then Power would be really good as well, but a lot more expensive. Anomalous, Detonate Mines, Enhance, Anomalous Sealskin, Assassin's Mark. So Enhance, it's really good for alternate gems, since it boosts their effect. The Detonate Mines as well, it gives you recover % of a life for each mine detonated. So this is another big part of the region, since we detonate a lot of mines, especially with Minefield every time. So this gives us a nice bit of recover life. Next up is Steelskin, so we just have this on left click. 2.5k damage we can take from the buff every now and then when it's up. The cooldown isn't even that long. Then Assassin's Mark, so we switched from Flammability to Assassin's Mark for bosses. Since Assassin's Mark does not have reduced curse effect on bosses, so definitely very strong for that. Next up is Skitterbolts, Vitality, Enlighten, and Herald of Ash, so that's how we got our 3 auras. And then we also have Valgrace, Summon Golem, Dash, and Wave of Conviction. So we self-cast Wave of Conviction on bosses to get the fire exposure. We also switched to Dash instead of Flame Dash. Well, my main reasoning to switch, I don't have the correct gem yet, but it's Diversion Dash that you want. So what Diversion Dash does is when you dash, you get 2 seconds of phasing. Which is definitely very strong, since a lot of times I will just accidentally dash into a pack and be stuck inside, and you'd have to throw your mine to detonate them, and then you can walk out. Now if you have the phasing from Diversion Dash, even if you dash in, you're stuck, well, you have phasing, so you can just walk back out easily. Also dropped Arcane Surge, since in our skill tree, the medium cluster we went for, we got Iron Pyrotechnics, which pretty much always gives us Arcane Surge when we detonate the mines targeting an enemy, which is always when you're mapping or fighting anything. And we also have Surprise Sabotage, which is just some pan and crit multi. And then, like I said before, we have a small cluster with Surging Vitality for life and regen. And the rest of our skill tree, pretty much still the same, still Acro, Phase Acro, and this is, I think, all the same. Make sure you pick up these two nodes to get a reduced mana reserved. This one is optional. I just leveled up and didn't have the point to spend anywhere else. I picked up this for mana as well. So brief thing about mana is try and get mana on your gear as well if you can, since more mana also means Vitality first of all reserves flat mana, so having a bigger mana pool already gives you more mana left to work with, and even with the percent Rs as well, if you get more mana, even reserving them, you have more than enough mana left for all your mines. As you can see, my Purifying Flame mines, I can have maximum 27 mines, which I have here, and I still have 196 mana left, so definitely more than enough. And then we still have these nodes, and this is all the same. We did go for Divine Fury, so we dropped Efficient Explosive since we don't need a reduced mana reservation, even though it's still a good node, but for 100% conversion we allocated Divine Fury, so we dropped all those older points that we had before, and then of course we still have the Gloves Craft, and then 50% of the Purifying Flame. And then the gems here is Conk Effect, Purifying Flame, Trap Mind Damage, Minefield, Awaken Added Fire, and Awakened Fire Pen. Even though they're awakened, they're like 10 or 15 chaos. And we also dropped Elemental Focus for Fire Pen, even though Elemental Focus would give us a lot of damage. Unfortunately, we really need a pen, since dropping Flammability and the Elemental Equilibrium Ring, we were lacking a lot of pen, so went for the gem here. So we'll show you a Shaper kill just to show the damage potential since all the changes. So you pre-stack all your mines, you wait till he procs, then you want a Wave of Conviction and curse him with Assassin's Mark and detonate all your mines. As you can see, once damage starts ramping up, if he didn't have an immunity phase, it would go even crazier than that. So we still have more than enough damage. And that will pretty much be it, since I'm very happy with the build at the moment, so I don't think he'll make any more crazy changes. We're very tanky, we're not really dying at all anymore. We can go even tankier to get, for example, endurance charges or fortify in the build would be insane, but unless I think of a way to get it without too much investment, I think I'll just drop that since we're not dying anyway. But that's the build. We're still doing all the content comfortably, so even Shaper and Conquerors, Elder Guardians, everything still gets one shot. The only thing I haven't tested is Awakener 8 yet, since dropping our damage, of course, since I've done Awakener 8 already twice, I think, so this will be my third one, the first time since changing this build. Now I still think he will go down pretty quickly, but probably not a one shot on the last phase, but with how tanky we are, we should be able to do it deathless pretty easily. Now, other than that, my league plans, pretty much just recovering from all the money I spent. Like I said, the bow, I probably spent like 10 or 12 exalts on it, which is way more than you should, but pretty happy with how the rest turned out. So yesterday we went down to 0 exalts and like 2 kills left, so we're pretty much rebuilding from that point. Just casually mapping, probably getting my Awakener bonus up at the moment, doing some Awakeners and Zana missions, of course, to make some money. And I'll see you in the next one.
We'll be right back.